article that said, right now in this moment in America should be the Super Bowl for Christians. This is our chance to really be who we say we are. That in times of crisis and in times of need, that we should stand out as those who are willing to be desperate to find ways to help people rather than desperate to find loopholes to get out of it. And that really struck me, because I think so often we do that. And so we're talking really, when we talk about compassion, a lot of that is love. Living a life of love that we're called to as the highest value for believers. You know that thing that faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love, that we, as pastors, we say at every wedding? I've been really convicted about this lately. That I think sometimes, especially frankly in our circles, in the circles that I was trained in, not necessarily raised in, but I was trained in, we may have flipped that and we've made faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is faith. You have to believe the right stuff. That is the most important. Convincing people, arguing with them until they believe right. And that's how God is going to judge us when we get to heaven. Did you believe all the right stuff on everything? And no, God made it very clear. The greatest of these is love. How do we really? Yes, faith is important. Hope of our future and hope in Christ is important, is paramount. Having faith, understanding faith in the right stuff, that's important. We need to understand that, knowing who God really is. But the most important piece, the real gospel is loving people. See, I'm already starting. I'm going to calm down. And I think anytime we get into this spot where we find ourselves more worried about convincing somebody of our rightness and of our doctrine, that's not laced in, encompassed in, enveloped, and part of love, we need to ask ourselves what is most important. I think sometimes because we have a weird view of the poor. We want them to act poor. We've talked about this. When you see someone using, SNAP EBT benefits and they're buying candy. Heard a recent story with somebody saying that they had people kind of chew them out because she was buying cupcakes at the store with her EBT cards because she was buying cupcakes for her daughter's birthday party at school. And you can't make cupcakes anymore. You have to buy them store-bought because of all the allergy stuff going on. And so we expect somebody who's poor. You got to act poor. How dare you do something nice for your kids so they can have a birthday party at school? That they don't deserve, the poor, if we're going to help them, they don't deserve a second of happiness or release, which is not what God has called us to. We have so many excuses. Get a job. Get a better job. It's one of my favorites. You know what? People who, if they're asking for help, they should get a job. You know that most of the people who are on public help or receiving help from churches or food banks are the working poor who have jobs. Then we say, get a better job. I talked with somebody once who as we talked about it, they said, well, why don't they just get an education, they could get an education, go back to school and get a better job. I'm like, well, if you're working 2 jobs and not making enough money because neither job gives you enough hours to get benefits, and you're raising a kid, in both, if there's 2 of you, both of you are working, who has the energy to go back to school? And then even if you did, then that doesn't automatically, you don't get a diploma and a job. You have to go out and find a job. Right? So there are these barriers. The church needs to be a place where we can help people and have a different attitude, a different understanding, that it becomes a beacon of hope and of change to people around us. That even if we don't have all the programs, that there is a way that we can be a people who are known for not just helping, but compassion and inspiring others to help. So I want to talk about, you'll notice in each week that we're talking about this, I want to change our actions, our attitudes, and our advocacy is what we need to be adding to our part. Because of Christ and the blessings that he has given us, we get to be like the Make-A-Wish people all the time for people in the world. You know the Make-A-Wish program? Some kid has cancer, and they get to go step onto the football field with the pro football player. We should be the place that when we get to help the poor, it's like Make-A-Wish. That we get every day the opportunity to be the people that they should turn to and know that there will be acceptance and care. And even if we can't solve all the physical problems, they're at least not going to be shamed. That we get to actually, for real, both inward and outward, behave behave lovely to those who are in need. That we show compassion, genuine compassion, real compassion. I had to look up all sorts of different definitions. Some of them are Bible definitions. Some of them, I like this one the best. That compassion, to have actual compassion, is sympathetic concern for the sufferings or misfortunes of others. That not only do we look at somebody else and go, but that we are not only sympathetic, oh, too bad, but we are concerned to the point of movement. Compassion means that there is concern. We're worried about them, about the sufferings, or even, I like that they added, the reason I chose this one is I like misfortunes. Because we've all had stuff that comes up that we needed help. I mean, mine is huge, right? I was an addict for all those years. I lost my job. This church surrounded my family and myself. And I believe, so again, when I'm talking to the choir, preaching to the choir, I know you guys have that in your heart. But one of the things I want to do is call us to not only have that here in this room and with each other, but we need to be those who are pushing that agenda out to others and calling others to that. And I chose the word downtrodden this week because it struck me, all the different words for people who are, it's like poverty didn't quite fit or marginalized didn't quite fit. Downtrodden is such a great old-timey word, right? It's like some BBC period piece with, the Gilded Age in America, or Downton Abbey, where there is the incredibly wealthy and the rich, and then there's the downtrodden, the chimney sweeps, yes sir, may I have another pip, right? That these are the oppressed and the treated badly. They're people who are treated badly by the people in power. Downtrodden has this idea of somebody treading on somebody, pushing them down. And we need to have actual compassion, vital, living compassion for those who are actively being pushed down by the world. And we're going to start this week. We're talking about Deuteronomy 24. And we'll start in verse 10 and 13. And the first idea is those in poverty. And I hope you give me some license to kind of take this and give us some principles. So this first section, Deuteronomy 24, 10 through 13 says this, and I'm going to put on my glasses even though I put it at 125% font. I am downtrodden in the eyes. I love this. If you lend anything to your neighbor, do not enter his house to pick up the item he is giving as security, as collateral. You must wait outside while he goes in and brings it out to you. If your neighbor is poor and he gives you his cloak as security for a loan, do not keep the cloak overnight. Return the cloak to its owner by sunset so he can stay warm through the night and then bless you. And the Lord your God will count you as righteous. And you're saying, Dave, this is what does that have to do with the poor? First of all, in all the commentaries, everything talks about these are laws about borrowing and lending. Yeah, they are. But who needs to borrow and who needs to borrow something, either a thing or have money lent? People who are stuck, who are downtrodden, who need help in that moment. Right? Yes, they are lending laws. They are rules and principles for rendering aid for those who have less, who have a need. And there's some principles here. Borrowers are those in need. That is one of the hilarious things about a capitalist system, right? That you can only borrow money if you already have a lot of money, right? You have to prove that you have access to money before you can really borrow it. How many people were terrified by this water bottle that was on the edge? You can now pay attention again. Right? You go in and they're very, there's this idea that, and I get it, it's a little bit of a joke. I understand the point of having rules and vetting people to make sure they can repay their loan. But this idea here is a little bit different. It's the idea of you loan something that they need, and it's such a weird rule. Like you can't just go barge in and grab whatever they borrowed and take it back right now. And the idea was you had to wait outside and kind of ask them, and then they had to bring it out to you. What a weird thing. It's your thing. It's your leaf blower. Go get it. A leaf blower was just a guy with big lungs who could... Thanks. I thought that was hilarious, but apparently I need to work on delivery on that. I think because it's a form of displaying dominance and power over the person who's borrowing. Because somebody who's borrowed, you suddenly have a superiority, and you have leverage, and you have power over them. And what a better way to show dominance than to be able to burst into somebody's house and take your stuff back. And God is saying, no. You need to have compassion. This person needed to borrow your leaf blower. Give him some dignity. And ask him for it back. And if they're like, I'm still using it, you got to wait. Be nice. Be kind. Do not insist. I think in broader terms, as we take this principle, do not insist on quick profit or quick repayment from those who are poor and need help. Loaning your leaf blower or loaning somebody money is not a way for you to have leverage and power over them. It's a way to help somebody who needs help. To be honest, there are all sorts of laws about not charging interest. We use a lot of Old Testament rules for things that we like and are easy, and to kind of go against sins that we don't like, that we would rather not be around. And yet, at the same time, we kind of ignore the ones that benefit us. Right? And then this idea of a cloak. The cloak was a very Lord of the Rings cloak. It's your weekly Lord of the Rings reference. It was a big cloak. It was a big cloak that doubled as a blanket or a bedroll, not just a jacket. And the idea was, if someone poor was so poor that all they could offer for collateral for a loan was their one thing. You get rid of everything in your life and all you've got left is your cloak, your one blanket, your one jacket. And they offer that as collateral. You could take it, but then every day you had to go back at nighttime and go, here's your jacket so you can sleep. Rather than using their lack of robe, lack of bed, lack of resources as leverage to get what you want out of them. Let's withhold resources of people to leverage to make sure they give us our money back or they give us the power that we want. That even when you are rightfully owed something, even when you have a right to it, that you had to make sure, no, they can have the basics of life. And every day you have enough compassion for somebody who's poor, you're going to give them their cloak back so they can have someplace warm to sleep that night. Widows or orphans or the poor with no resources, that's all they had. And the command was to give it back when they needed it, before they had to come beg for it. Not only is there a law here, but there's a principle about how we treat people. Rather than make somebody come back and say, please, mister, may I have another? Right? Rather than have them come back, it's cold tonight, can I please have my jacket? That you would go to them. Imagine if they came and said, okay, hey, here's your jacket. Here's your robe. I know. Rather than using that like, oh man, think about it. How we would do it today, sadly, so often. Man, I know I'm going to get my money back now because they're going to freeze until they give it to me. They're going to freeze, they're going to starve, they're going to be sick until they give me what I want. The poor and the working poor who did not have enough to function in society were supposed to be given dignity as well as resources. In our world, this is the poor who need help. We are called to help them and not add onerous requirements. When we're going to help somebody, we shouldn't add a form all the time. When someone calls and asks our church for baby formula, I'm not going to make them fill out a form. Right? We don't want to add barriers. We want to be reckless in our desire to help. We need to be more concerned about their wellness and their dignity than just recouping our losses. I'm going to say this. I probably say this later, but I want to make sure I get this out. God was desperate to find every loophole he could to bring us to grace, to bring us to salvation. Those of us who don't deserve it, those of us who are sinners, those of us who are enemies, those of us who are nice people, those of us who like him, those of us who are seeking. He was desperate to work around every barrier. He was desperate to use every loophole, to try every trick. And the only way that his grace would be denied and his resources was denied to us if we refused to accept it. And yet we look for loopholes to get out of it. So, okay, stop. Okay, calm down. And I don't mean we. I mean we. Right? We're so often looking like, I just don't know if I can do this. I want to make sure they're really worthy of receiving this. Make sure that they've proven that they're sad enough, that they're sorry enough, that they're poor enough, that they're going to do what I think they should do with this money or this resource or this time or this dignity. That's not how God operates. God became one of us, endured every temptation, suffered and died, and rose again. Went to extreme lengths to find a way to give himself away, rather than extreme lengths in every loophole to keep his own glory. Sorry, that's free. That's not even on the outline. Number 2, justice for all. We love that phrase, right? We love that phrase. It's in our pledge. But all means no exceptions. Doesn't require that you are a member of our church. Doesn't require that you believe all the right stuff. Doesn't require that you are a citizen. Doesn't require that you are of a certain group or part. That there is justice for all. God calls for justice for all. And it's interesting, justice meaning this. Now hang with me here. There's a lot of different definitions of justice. I was a political theory major. We talked about this a lot. And it's not weak sometimes limit or think of justice as just fairness. Just fairness, level playing field, making sure it's all the same. It's not just fairness. It is seeking to change the systems and attitudes that are oppressive, that cause injustice. That we need to work hard to find ways to lift up those who are downtrodden. We need to be uptrodden. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but you know what I mean. Justice, one definition that we used to use is the fair distribution of resources like wealth, power, and respect. Justice is a fundamental moral principle that guides our personal behavior and relationships, that promotes proper conduct and proper respect. Justice for all. It's more than just saying, is this fair? So let's see what God has to say about that in Deuteronomy. We're in Deuteronomy, and again, 24. We're starting in verse 14. Never take advantage of the poor and destitute laborers, whether they are fellow Israelites or foreigners living in your towns. And here's the thing, we talk a lot about citizenship and foreigners now. I mean, that's in the news a lot. Think about Israel. The foreigners living with them they were commanded to go in and kill them at some point. Right? Kick them out. Destroy them. And then God said, you know what? Even if there's some left, you need to treat them like your own. You need to love them, right? Even foreigners living in your towns, you must pay them their wage each day before sunset because they are poor and are counting on it. If you don't, they might cry out to the Lord against you, and it would be counted against you as sin. That's including the foreigners. And here's the deal. Hired laborers were paid for their wages. They did the work, and they were supposed to get their wages, and they were supposed to get it every day, ensuring that no one was in need at the end of the day. It's easy for those who have money or who have privilege, who are kind of up above, to go, you know what, I'll get to you tomorrow. Or to withhold it for whatever reason, often just to prove they're powerful. Just to kind of show, you know what, you need to come to me. And the idea was, they're working this job, they're poor, they need to eat tonight, they don't have an extra resource, they don't have extra. I saw a video of a person that was complaining about people who were complaining about not getting SNAP benefits. And they were like, you're telling me you don't have a pantry, you don't have pantry food, you should have been gathering up a little safety net, a little emergency fund, and a little emergency stuff in your pantry to have food in case. And so many people immediately afterward were like, the reason they're getting SNAP benefits is they don't have extra. They're using every penny of that to buy just enough food for today. I've been in that spot. There was a time, because of my addiction, when I was trying to find work and I was in recovery, that we just didn't have any food at the end of the week. And I went out and I went into our camping gear. And I told the kids, we're going to have a special treat today. We're going to have camping food. And we got our freeze-dried camping food and our MREs and some cans of stuff that I had in the camping gear, and we ate that for that meal. And then later that day, someone from the church, we hadn't told anybody this. It wasn't like I'm sharing this. I should have asked for help, but I didn't. Someone showed up at our store with 2 big bags of groceries at our door. We needed our wages that day. And the point here is God is saying, this is not a statute about when to do payroll. This is about showing dignity and compassion, real compassion that looks into the lives of those who are in need and provides for them today and doesn't use your wealth as leverage to get what you want out of them. We should never make somebody come beg for their money. Right? What if at your job you had to go every week and go, hey, can I get paid today? There's just one little verse I didn't include here, but it's about justice, the idea of parents not being put to death for the sins of their children, nor children for the sins of their parents. And the idea here is, look, justice is on all of us. The justice is not just fairness, it's about, it's not using an excuse to keep people downtrodden because of their name, or their family, or their race, or their heritage. You're part of the wrong family, the wrong class, the wrong heritage, the wrong race, the wrong religion, etc. That we're to treat people as individuals with dignity. And then verses 14 and 15 and 17 and 18. True justice must be given to the foreigner living among you and to orphans, and you must never accept a widow's garment as security for her debt. Always remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and that the Lord your God redeemed you from slavery. That's why I have given you this command. I love this. He gives some specifics here. Look, this isn't justice. This is beyond fairness. Don't treat the foreigners different. You got to treat them well. Don't treat orphans different. And don't even take the cloak for a loan from a widow. We have some widows in this room. You can keep your jackets. Actually, some of you, I think, bring cloaks to church because sometimes the room is cold. I think I see a few Snuggies in here right now. And the idea was, here's what I think this means, as part of this, or an underlying point is, that we don't make decisions based on how useful you're going to be. We don't offer charity, we don't offer help, just because you're able to contribute to the system. Who is not really able in that situation, in an agrarian lifestyle back then, in a tradesman world, orphans, widows, and sometimes foreigners were not able to contribute to the community at the same level, or in the same way. And rather than saying, you know what, why should we give to an orphan? They're not going to pay that back. They don't have anything to offer. The idea was, no, we're going to treat all of them with respect. These laws provided for protection for those in financial distress, such as, restoring pawned items and not taking collateral that would be hurtful. They are to be treated specifically with justice and not be denied consideration. Sometimes we see justice as making sure the right people get punished. And that's not what it's about. True justice is making sure everyone is cared for. God is unfair, right? God is unfair. He's given everybody grace, desperate to offer grace. With the only hang-up, are we willing to accept it? Not that we deserve it, not that we do the right work, not that we believe the right thing, not that we continue, right? Takes us right where we're at and works with us until we're with him. And I will say this, Jesus' justice echoes this. Jesus' justice doesn't look fair either. Right? I love the parable of the workers. Guy shows up, right? The guy shows up at 9 o'clock in the morning, another guy shows up at noon, another guy shows up at 4. And at 5 o'clock it's time to pay him, and Jesus tells the story, right? Pays them all the same amount. And the 9 o'clock guy is ticked. Because he assumed, well, I'm going to make more. And Jesus is like, no, you all get grace. And some of us who have been in the church for forever, we look around and go, look at this Johnny-come-lately. They don't dress right, they don't talk right, they don't believe all the right stuff. They keep out there trying to just be loving to everybody. They don't get it yet. Right? I'll set them straight. No, Jesus' justice was totally unfair, but it was about treating everyone with dignity and giving them what they needed, uplifting the downtrodden. So what do? We need to be desperate for justice for all, not as a slogan or a pledge, but as a central driving force as a follower of Jesus. We're not worried about meting out punishment, but we want to be loving and kind and fair to everybody. And not fair to everybody, but offering dignity to everybody. The example I always think of, if there was a race on a football field, and we say the rules are the same, whoever crosses the end of the line first wins. And one group has to start on the other ends on the 1. Another group starts at the 50, and the last group starts at the 10. And we say, hey, rules are the same. Everybody starts at the same time. You all run as fast as you can. You get to the end. The person who gets there first wins. Oh, and by the way, the guy who starts on the 10, they're also the ref. Right? We need to care about dignity and care and lifting up the downtrodden. Specifically, I'll say this, orphans, widows, and foreigners. They're named, and those in poverty. And lastly, 3, action, attitude, and advocacy. It ends with this, verses 19 to 22. When you're harvesting your crops and you forget to bring in a bundle of grain from your field, don't go back and get it. Leave it for the foreigners, the orphans, and the widows. Then the Lord your God will bless you in all you do. When you beat the olives from your olive tree, don't go over the boughs twice. Leave the remaining olives for the foreigner, orphan, and widow. When you gather the grapes in your vineyard, don't glean the grapes that are after they are picked. Leave the remaining grapes for the foreigner, orphan, and widow. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and that is why I'm giving you this command. Gleaning is amazing. What a great social network. A little bit of socialism going on. Right? The idea that when you went through your crops, you would pick as much as you could normally, you do your normal, but you made specific account for not picking them all. The goal of that businessman who ran his farm was not to make as much money and get everything he could out of it. The goal was to make enough and then leave enough for the others. And there's some dignity in that, right? So that they didn't have to go beg. And then you could deign whether you'd give them some food or some money and decide whether you want to help. That they could go and gather it themselves. And this isn't a don't work, don't eat kind of thing, but this is like if they were physically able to go do it, that was available to them. That the goal was not to make as much as you can. That's not stewardship. Good stewardship is not making sure we wring out every penny out of everything that we do all the time. It is to make sure that we're caring for all the people that God cared for. There are a couple of companies, I'm going to use this real quick, just an example. And maybe I shouldn't even do this. Let me leave this as a caveat. I'm not saying one is good and one is bad, but I just think different philosophies. Walmart and Costco. Walmart's the biggest employer in the United States, and huge profits. And their part of their plan is to have workers who work just under the number of hours they have to work so that they don't get benefits. They don't have to pay benefits. And then they hire more people. So they're able to hire more people just at that level. And then the greatest beneficiaries, a huge percentage of Walmart workers get SNAP benefits and are on public health care. So they don't have to pay benefits from the corporation. They rely on the public sector to do that. Costco is a great corporation. They make a ton of money. They have a huge profit. Not one, and again, one is not good and the other is evil. I'm just saying this is just different philosophy. That they make less profit, but they have one of the highest employee retention rates because they pay a little bit more, they pay people full time, and they give them full benefits. But they don't make as much money. I think that's a little example. They don't go back and gather that last little bit of grain. Their goal is a little bit different. Again, not one is moral or immoral. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that they offer some dignity. I had a whole list of excuses why we don't help people, why we don't show actual compassion. I'm going to save that for another day. But we have all sorts of reasons why we try and get out of it, all the loopholes that we get out. And we'll talk about that next week. A bunch of excuses, and really it boils down to that. But I want to call us to this. Action, attitude, and advocacy. What should we do? What actions can we take? One, we need to give. Be willing to hold our stuff and our resources lightly. When we're able to, we can. Nothing makes me feel better than when I'm able to give. When you're able to help somebody. I got to tell you, I do love it sometimes, and I probably have been taken advantage of. But I love nothing if I have extra money in my pocket and I get off the ferry to give it to one of those guys that asked for it. There's something about that. And it's not all about me, but I feel like that is me showing somebody that there's somebody that's cared. So we need to look for opportunity to care. Listen. One of the things we need to do is listen to them, not just give them money or not just give what they want, but listen to them. Let them tell their story. Offer some dignity to them. And instead of judging or giving them a solution, you know what you ought to do is get a better job or just listen and say, I am so sorry. I love you. How can I help? Volunteer somewhere that they're helping. Let's partner with people. One of the things I'm working on right now is, besides this is a great example, the Feed the Troops, but partnering with other churches or other organizations that are doing some good work. We know we can't run a bunch of programs here, but we can certainly partner and help them. And we'll see some coming up in the next year, that we're going to have an opportunity to work like dogs. So buckle up. Drive somebody somewhere. Take somebody, they need a ride, drive them somewhere. Somebody might need some childcare. Susie, we're on the same page. Cook a meal for somebody. The love language. One of my favorite love language moments from Robert and Susie was Robert was really into smoking cheese for a while, and he brought me huge hunks of smoked Gouda. I'm not hinting, I'm just saying. Help with resource hunting. If you don't have the resources, say, you know what, you got to go at work. I'm going to get on the internet and I am going to look for the next all day long to find some optional resources for you and help you fill out the forms and get into it. And maybe again, just give. Our attitudes. We need to remember that we are all God's children. There should be no discrimination and no partiality. This is a quote from one of the commentaries I read this week. Dear ones, the Old Testament non-discrimination laws should call us to be careful of the sinful tendency to label anyone different than us as bad. Racism, gender discrimination, economic favoritism should have no place in the heart and life of a Christian. Couldn't say it better myself. God is desperate to help those who are downtrodden and will offer real help to anyone no matter what. There's no qualification. The only qualification is to accept it. So we want to offer humility. We want to have an attitude that offers humility and dignity to everyone. So let's get off our high horse. We are not in a position to judge because we were slaves in Egypt and needed God to get us out. And then advocacy. Remember, we were slaves. This encourages empathy, urging followers of Jesus not to forget our own times when we needed help and then offer that to others. We need to speak out and use our voice and our vote and our power and our influence for the downtrodden instead of upholding systems that keep us comfortable at their expense. When we need to be discerning, sure, but we need to be discerning about finding new ways to help somebody rather than discerning to find new ways to make sure we keep up protected. And I think the best way we can do that, honest, in this group, is call out, I'm going to say this in a nice way, let's call out, have conversation, direction with our friends and family to help them come to that same position as well. Advocate for the downtrodden by conversations with our friends rather than joining in and complaining and joining in maybe on some weird views and that kind of drift into stuff. Have the courage to stand up and say, yeah, I don't think that's right. Make Thanksgiving awkward if you have to. If someone says, I don't know why these people are all, sorry, that's my voice for cranky people. But say that, maybe they're in genuine need and we can find a way to help. So I'll leave us with this. Let me pray and then we'll end. God, thank you so much that you had grace on us, that you sought every way to somehow meet us where we were at. And you were successful in coming into our lives and offering compassion and dignity and resources. And help us to have that same motivation and drive as you. And when we don't, God, we ask your Spirit to infuse us, convict us, and empower us. God, thank you for these folks who I know want to do that. Help us to be a weird little force of light in this community that causes love and compassion for the downtrodden. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Proverbs 22, 22, and 23. Don't rob the poor just because you can, or exploit the needy in court, for the Lord is their defender, and he will ruin anyone who ruins them. May we be people who show our love for God and his love for us by offering actions, attitudes, and advocacy to those that lift up and offer real comfort to the downtrodden, to the glory of God and the flourishing of our neighbors. Thank you so very much.